Hello, everyone. I'm doing another presentation that I gave at ITESOL last weekend and putting it on the internet for everyone to watch if they so choose. This is kind of a low-hanging fruit presentation on AI, and really I'm not an expert at all in AI, but I have a certain way that I use it and a certain perspective that I thought some people would benefit from hearing, and you're never going to lose money betting on people not being as familiar with something as you assume they are. That's a weird way to phrase that kind of bet, that kind of confidence. Anyway, I was pretty confident that even though I think what I'm saying here is very basic, there would still be a lot of people who'd never heard of using AI in the classroom, don't use it, don't know even the basics of how to do it. So I actually was surprised by how right I was with that assumption. And not even really for the AI parts, but for some of the other parts, which I'll get to in a minute. Anyway, so this presentation makes some assumptions about the writing process for ESL or, English for, I guess EFL is technically included as well, but especially IEPs, people that are explicitly preparing students for university. Um, it helps at all levels of teaching writing to make process more visible and above board. This is for a few reasons. One of them is, well, I guess maybe the main one from my perspective is that university faculty outside of the ESO classroom tend to do this, right? So they tend to prioritize revision more than final products, and they tend not to evaluate first drafts very strictly or even at all. They tend to just give feedback on them and just say, if you did it, if you turned it in, you get all the points. So it doesn't necessarily help our students that much to focus on, being able to produce first drafts really, really well when the first drafts are not being going to be evaluated that strictly. On the other hand, it would help them a lot in all these other classes if we teach them how to revise first drafts and make them better, and especially to pay attention to different kinds of feedback. So, and I mean, just anecdotally, but I feel like many people will have this experience. If you don't put these things above board, like the steps of the revision process, and give them their discrete points, most students just won't do them. So it really helps to put them, I said this in a previous presentation, would give every step of the revision process its own assignment on Canvas, give it its own points, often do it in class. Um, and those things will help your students build habits that will help them in other classes. So also a bit of background is that it's very, very helpful to have students turn things in shareable document formats. I use Google Docs for almost everything nowadays. I believe Microsoft Word documents also allow you to see the writing process. What I find most useful about Google Docs is that they allow you to replay the writing process with some external add-ons for Chrome. So revision history and draft back. I feel like at this point I should already start crediting Brent Warner for a lot of the know-how that went into this presentation because I learned about both of those from him, I believe, and also the AI prompts that I'm going to share later are also from him. But um, if you have shareable documents, meaning documents where you can view the edit history, not just look at the document itself as a final product, then you can see where students are making changes and the kind of changes that they're making. Um, a very boilerplate level of protection from AI written work as opposed to AI assisted work, I guess you could say, meaning where the student just typed the prompt into the AI and copied and pasted what the AI wrote back into the document and then turned it in, as opposed to asking the AI for advice on something that they had written, um, will show up in the edit history in that copy pastes will immediately be visible, right? So if something appears all at once, then you know it's been copy pasted. A Chrome add-on called Revision History actually counts the number of times that this happens, and you can see the original format that they were copied and pasted in. So but down here you see an example of the kind of thing that I wouldn't allow in my classes most of the time, which is you know, grammar, what is it called? Not grammar translation, computer assisted translation with DeepL or Google Translate. And of course, in an ESO class, we're very interested in whether students can write grammatical sentences by themselves without software assistance. So, in a nutshell, use some kind of document format where you can replay the creation of the document. And this gives a level of boilerplate protection from copying and pasting and also allows you to see other details of the writing process. Um, for example, what days they edited, what times they edited, how long they usually edited, how long they spent total editing the document. Those are all visible and very useful, in my opinion. Okay. And last bit of background, whenever you do a new, whenever you use a new piece of technology or a piece of technology that's potentially new for a lot of your students, and if you're talking about AI, a lot of them will pretend that it's new to them, even if it's not. But do it all in class the first time, and you know, again, I'm going to use this weird betting metaphor, but you'll never lose money betting that someone in class is not someone in hold on. How am I going to phrase this? You'll never lose money betting that someone in class doesn't know the thing that you're about to talk about, even if you think everyone in the world uses it, or that there will be some unexpected error or some unexpected difficulty in logging in or opening Google Drive or whatever that you have never seen before. Okay, so always do things in class the first time because you don't want to be sending emails back and forth with a student who's asking you for like a verification code for a login service that you've never heard of before, because that's just a nightmare. So do everything in class so everyone, at least that everyone knows how to log in and do everything in very basic terms at least. Right? Okay. So my particular way of using AI, and this isn't everyone's, but this is the way that I think is the most common and probably the most justifiable use of AI in the writing process is here and here, somewhere between drafting and revising, somewhere between revising and editing. Editing meaning something more like copy editing here, looking for just kinds of grammar errors, and obviously before submitting. So I don't use AI in the drafting process, meaning as they're writing the first draft, although some writing instructors do ask students or allow students to use AI to get, ideas or to brainstorm or something like that. I think that's potentially justifiable, but I don't do that yet. And what I'm going to talk about here is not that. Fundamentally, the way that I'm asking students to use AI is as another set of eyes on their paper, in addition to their fellow students. So again, it helps to have this as an explicit item in your LMS, but have students do some kind of peer feedback, ideally, again, for the first time in class. So have them show their papers to each other, have them write some notes in the margins, teach them some common error codes like, comma splice, punctuation, things like that. Um, have them go to the writing center. The writing center at SUU, which is the university that I teach at, is staffed by their fellow students who have been good in writing classes in the past. So it's a kind of peer feedback, but it's also peer feedback from experts, and it's free. And students can make as many appointments as they want almost. And I really recommend that they do that. And I recommend that all writing teachers assign students to go and do this and actually give points for it. So it's another AI is another set of eyes similar to those first two. It has some advantages in that it's also free. Um, it's available 24/7, which the writing center and hopefully their friends or their classmates are not. And, they can ask for feedback multiple times, even in 1 hour, the writing center won't necessarily be amenable to this, but you could make the edits and immediately ask for feedback on the new version of your writing. And you could potentially do this hundreds of times before turning in the next draft, right? So the disadvantages are that AI is kind of dumb in some ways. I mean, it's tremendously intelligent in some ways and also very dumb in some other ways. The main ways that I find that it's dumb that are salient to our classes are that it doesn't understand what a writing class is, and it doesn't understand, unless told specifically, what kind of expectations you have as far as writing or as far as revision. Um, and that's where the prompt engineering comes in. You can make the AI smarter by giving it more specific directions. But that's a disadvantage in general, that it's dumb and students aren't always aware of how dumb it is. So sometimes they'll ask it for feedback and it'll spit out something that's not at all what the class requires, and the students don't know why that is. Anyway, so like I've said, I recommend giving discrete points for this in your LMS. This is exactly what is in um my Canvas assignment that's, I believe, called AI revision or something like that. So I recommend you give explicit instructions on what you're requiring them to do. Feed in the paragraphs one by one, and then turn in the chat with the chat bot. ChatGPT gives and Google Gemini both give really convenient and pretty, I think, intuitive ways of submitting a chat transcript. I've never used Copilot, but I assume it's not too different. And very importantly, give them the prompt. And the prompt is right here. This is again adapted from Brent Warner, who, I mean, if you're enjoying this presentation, you should really just go follow Brent because he does a lot more things like this. Maybe um, he uses AI a lot more in his classes than I do. This is a very, again, low-hanging fruit version of the AI integration into the writing process. But go visit him and you'll find a lot more prompts similar to this, probably better written than this. Again, I recommend you give students the prompt and require that they use this prompt because the feedback that they get will be somewhat predictable because of that. If they're writing their own prompts, there's no telling what they'll get. So, um, and again, when they're done using this in ChatGPT, ask them to submit the chat so you can actually see that they used this prompt and then see what AI told them to do in response. So there's an example here. I'll let you guys click on this if you're watching this on YouTube, because you'll have a link later to the slides, and then you can click on this link by yourself. So you can also ask ChatGPT or Google Gemini or presumably Copilot to give grammar feedback. The last prompt was for structure feedback. So it asked the chatbot to identify good topic sentences and things like that. This prompt is more for grammar, and I don't think this one is based on one of Brent Warner's. He probably has a better one than this one. But anyway, so it's less reliable, strangely enough, for giving grammar feedback than for giving structure feedback. I find that ChatGPT in particular tends to think any long sentence with commas in it is going to have comma splices, even if they're not comma splices. So, take that with a grain of salt, or importantly, tell your students to take it with a grain of salt. It will probably highlight some sentences that are excessively long pretty reliably, but not always identify whether the length is a problem. Anyway, this is another way to use ChatGPT in the revision process. And here's an example. You can click on that by yourselves later. So, kind of the fuel that makes this whole process work is that you're asking students to actually do this and use the feedback, and then it falls upon you, the instructor, to actually check the feedback that they got and whether they actually made changes in response to that feedback. So again, the first time you do this in class, actually give maybe 10 minutes after they've used ChatGPT to make changes to their essay and walk around and make sure that they're actually reading what ChatGPT told them to do, and maybe asking you for verification that what ChatGPT said was right. This can be a helpful consciousness raising episode as well because the students might, you know, think ChatGPT is always right, and it's definitely not. So it's a good experience to have students ask you, ChatGPT said this was a good topic sentence, and it's something like, in this paragraph, I will talk about blank. And you can tell them, no, ChatGPT actually doesn't always write good topic sentences. But it's, a useful exercise as well, even if it's not good feedback, or it doesn't provide good examples of topic sentences, just because students will be more aware after that of what actually makes a good topic sentence, right? So good consciousness raising in a couple ways. All right. So this is the area of the presentation when I gave it at ITESOL where not students, I always get to a point in my presentations where I can't put words together anymore. Um, a lot of people actually had questions about this, and this is not really related to the overall point of my presentation is just an aside, which I came back to after I realized I would have more time than I thought. So this is a checklist for spotting AI plagiarism, meaning students are asking the AI to write their whole paper for them instead of using it for the purposes that I recommended earlier. And again, presuming that that's not allowed in your class. Um, and also presuming that students are relatively savvy to, you know, um, the kind of plagiarism that would be easily caught by looking at the document's history. So this is based on real world experience for me because I had a class fairly recently where roughly not a third, maybe a fifth of the class tried this version of plagiarism where they would not copy and paste the output of the AI chatbot, but look at the chatbot's output in another window and manually type it into their document. So it wouldn't appear as a copy and paste in the document because they knew I was looking for those. Um, Now, assuming that students are doing that, and this is a relatively savvy way of using AI to cheat on assignments, a checklist that I have sort of constructed in collaboration with the academic integrity officer at my university is is this, which you see here. First, if students are doing this, meaning manually copying AI output into a document, it will show these signs. One of them is that they'll be typing much faster than usual. Instead of taking roughly 30 minutes a page, which seems to be the average in my classes, either the high-level IEP classes or the English comp for freshmen class that I also teach as an overload class, they will type much, much faster because they're basically not thinking while they type. Also, if they're doing this, again, manually copying from AI output, their typing will proceed basically linearly from the top to the bottom of the page or the top to the bottom of the essay with almost no breaks. Also, they will edit, but only edit for typos, meaning if they type something and something in the last sentence suddenly gets a red underline on it, they'll go back and fix that, or they'll at least right click on it and let Google Docs fix it for them. And that's really the only kind of editing that you'll see if students are doing this, because they might just, hit the wrong key as they're manually copying from the AI output. Also, and this wasn't necessarily a condition for me, but the academic integrity is also AI. That's funny. Academic integrity office required that at least one or two other software AI detectors agreed that it was likely AI before they would sort of, rubber stamp my assessment that the student had likely committed AI-based plagiarism. And I found this checklist pretty useful in the last couple semesters for sussing out this kind of slightly more sophisticated use of AI to to basically to cheat, to avoid doing assignments, to avoid engaging with the writing process. So again, the boilerplate level of protection is using draftback or revision history, which again are Chrome add-ons to just see if things are copied and pasted. This checklist is for a slightly more sophisticated version of plagiarism where they're not copying and pasting, but they're still, copying in another sense AI's output. All right, so here are some links which you guys can't click on looking at a YouTube video, but you will be able to after you use this QR code to view the slides. All right, and yeah, again, I recommend you go check out Brent Warner's blog and or other endeavors. He has at least two podcasts and I don't know what else he does. A lot of things. He's also a professor of ESL in Orange County, California. And yeah, thanks for listening. I'll see you later.